Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here today. As we transition into 2017, we've been at this process since January, a process that for us has really been energizing, exciting as we get ready to really work into the next phase of the development of our football team. To just give a sense of where we've come over the past 7 months, we began with clearly a vision of where we wanted to go. And that vision was a tradition of excellence, one that here at Notre Dame is epitomized with God, country, and Notre Dame. We know what the bar is. So it was clear to have that vision in front of our football team in January. And then from there, a mission. And that mission is really clear to our football team, and that is to graduate all of our players and to win a national championship. And then embark on that journey with the values necessary to get there. And, you know, through the winter and through the spring and in the summer, we've had to have a total preparation of our football team, our staff, everybody associated with Notre Dame football to see that get to the point to where we are today. And that's why I'm so excited to be moving our football team into the next step of this development. Those traits that we've been developing on our football team after we established the vision and the mission of this team have come together. It's pretty exciting to see it. As we start to now get onto the field, there won't be a huge change in what the expectations are from our football team, other than we start to include football into that narrative. But I can tell you that we're in a different place than we were, and it's because of our players. It's because of our strength staff. It's because of our coaches, our support staff have been unified in that vision, that mission, and the values that are so important to living up to those standards of excellence. So, you know, as I stand in front of you today, I'll certainly answer questions about our football team as they relate to more of the X's and the O's and the players, but we haven't had a practice yet, so it's difficult. I can talk more in terms of who has made progress in those areas of attention to detail, who's made progress as it relates to, you know, attitude, who's made the great progress necessary in terms of, you know, doing things right, being smart, having grit. All of the things that are so important to developing the kind of tradition of excellence and, as I mentioned, the mission here, and that is to graduate all the players and win a national championship. That's why I'm here. That's the only reason why I'm here, is to fulfill that mission. So as we get into our first day of pads and begin that tomorrow, we'll be evaluating our football team in a similar fashion. So with that, let's begin questions about the 2017 football team.
Just raise your hand and Michael or I will get you the mic.
Hey, Brian, I noticed on your roster that Daniel Cage wasn't included and wondered if you could clarify his status.
Yeah, Daniel will not play for us this year. He's had a couple of medical conditions that, one, I think we all know publicly that he's had a couple of concussions, and he has a knee. So he's going to step away this year, will not play for us, and you know, reevaluate, you know, the situation at the end of the year.
In light of that, I know you haven't had a practice yet. I know that Jerry Tillery's been working at nose guard.
Yes.
Just in terms of what you've been able to glean from the freshmen, do you think, I know you have other people, but do you think any of the freshmen might be able to help you at that position?
Well, Kurt Heinisch is going to have to be evaluated, and Myron is going to have to be evaluated. Both the freshmen will have to be part of the evaluation process. They did some really good things in terms of developing, in terms of strength and power and quickness during the time that they were here. So they'll be part of the evaluation process as to whether they can, you know, assist in some fashion in the fall. Yep.
Is Ewell not in that group?
Oh, yeah, he would be part of that as well. He would be part of that evaluation as well.
Any word on where it stands with Alohi Gilman's appeal to the NCAA to play this year?
We were briefed on Friday that, you know, we should be getting some kind of word here, but we don't have any specific information as to a timetable, but generally these cases are cleared up, you know, sometime in camp.
As you begin camp, knowing that that's somewhat of an uncertainty and knowing that he's a pretty quality player, do you rep him as if he's going to play this season out of the gate, or do you kind of put him on the back burner until you have that status decided?
What we'll do is probably get him some work in there to keep him, you know, part of the installation and understanding of assignments and what we're doing, you know, because again, he didn't have the luxury of going through spring ball, so he's going to have to learn, but we'll also make certain that we have contingency plans. So, you know, the first 3-4 days, you know, you'll see, you know, a number of guys working at those positions, so we make sure that we cover all bases.
And again, kind of piggybacking off of Daniel's situation, I know Jerry Tillery is a guy I'm sure you're anxious to see on the practice field. You know, at the end of last year, there was a little bit of a loose end with him because of what happened in the USC game. Is there any chance that he misses game times, or has that discipline already been taking place during the offseason?
Yeah, we took that situation extremely serious and took the steps to make sure that he was held accountable for what we felt was behavior unacceptable. He was asked to fulfill counseling and community service. He did that, and because of that, he has covered himself relative to the sanctions that we put forth. So there won't be a suspension of any kind relative to playing time.
And last one from me, I know that those green T-shirts mean a lot in terms of what guys are doing in attention to detail. I think I saw in one of the little video clips that Brandon Wimbush was one of the guys that was wearing a green shirt. What did you hear about him this summer that prompted him to earn that? What do you feel like you're getting from him from a leadership standpoint?
Well, the green jerseys were given out to players that were quote-unquote starving in terms of their work ethic, their desire to be great, and we wanted to give those out as a form of modeling to all the other players that were in our program to see what you needed to do to wear one of those green jerseys. We didn't roll those jerseys out in January. Because we were all trying to build that base of what it looked like to do all the things necessary to be that kind of football player here at Notre Dame, both on and off the field. And Brandon has exhibited those traits. So when we talk about the values, when we talk about those traits, he has lived in the trait of excellence in all of those areas. So we wanted other players to see Brandon Wimbush in a green shirt and say, that's what it looks like. The way he handles himself, the way he works, his attention to detail, the way he handles himself on campus, that's what I want to model myself after. And so you can imagine that if we put him in a green shirt, he was doing the things necessary that we want others to do as well.
Throughout your career, you've had coaching continuity most of the time. Obviously, this year you made significant changes after the 16 season. I was wondering what the last 7 or 8 months have been like for you in terms of exchange of football ideas with 3 new coordinators.
I don't know that the X's and the O's, Tim, were really the the eye-opening moments as much as just really personalities and what drives them, and really getting to know them as human beings, because when you don't have a past relationship with them, you're getting to know them as people. I don't know that I walked in and Mike Elko showed me a defense that I haven't seen before. What he showed me was an incredible attention to detail, a great way to communicate and teach. Chip Long showed me just an incredible veracity to want to be great in everything that he does, and his ability to relay that to the players under his charge. So it was really about that more than anything else, than it was an eye-opening experience in terms of a scheme that I hadn't seen before. So it was really getting to know them and where I can help them across the board with my experience of 26 years of being a head coach.
How about Coach Polian? Because obviously when you came in here, you had an opportunity to retain him and didn't.
Right.
What made you go back to him? I know he was excited about the opportunity to come back here, but what about him, and what did he bring to the equation?
Well, experience. I think, if the positions were different when I came here, I would have definitely kept Coach Polian on. I had a great deal of respect for him coming in. So I think first and foremost, I wanted somebody with a veteran presence, somebody that had experience at the highest level. Special teams experience was crucial. And then coming off his experience as a head coach, he was going to have to get in front of a room, and that room being special teams players, and really take charge of a group of guys that are so crucial to our success. And when you put that responsibility on somebody, you want to be able to trust that person. And I trust him to have that leadership role. And so he brings all that experience to Notre Dame.
I know you said it wasn't necessarily X's and O's that led you to the offensive and defensive coordinator, but in terms of Chip Long's philosophy and approach, we saw in the spring that he used multiple tight ends. Was there any aspect of the X's and O's there that you felt you needed to maybe transition into a little bit?
Well, if the question is posed in that fashion, absolutely, right? In the hiring process, I was certainly focused on somebody that first and foremost I believed was an outstanding play caller. There had to have been that connection where I believed that I could fully turn over the play calling and focus my attentions where I knew they needed to be focused on. And that was first and foremost with Chip. Secondly, his ability to utilize the tight ends within the offensive structure. I didn't want somebody that was going to be in 4 and 5 wides and just chucking it out all over the place. I wanted the utilization of our offensive line, which I knew was going to be a strength and continue to be a strength, and the tight end position. And Chip had a great background in that and showed that over the last year. So those were two absolute key points in the hiring process.
Changing gears here, Justin Yoon's situation, where is he physically?
Physically, outstanding summer. Healthy, was able to do all the things that we wanted him to do. If Coach Bayless was here right now, he would tell you he was happy with the progress that he made, even in the weight rooms in terms of his strength development. All of the things that we had put markers on him, he exceeded all those.
In the spring, when you decided to sit him out, I mean, what exactly, how would you depict what his situation was at that point?
Well, he had a chondral defect, and so that required rest. It has since healed. We wanted to be cautious with him, and it allowed us, with Kohler to do that. He was, as you know, a senior that had experience, and he came out in the spring and did a really nice job. So it allowed us to really just sit him and allow him to heal properly. It was the smart thing to do. It was the prudent thing to do. We weren't playing any games, and it showed to be an effective thing because he had a really good summer. Sure.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
What besides the obvious of hiring new coaches, feels differently to you heading into the season?
Well, I think the positive, coaching environment that we've created for our players, again, it starts with the vision that I had, the feedback that I was able to garner. We've asked our players to be intentional in everything that we do, and so we're just doing what we've asked our players to do. Be intentional in everything that we do within this process, and by doing so, we've been able to build great relationships with our players. Our staff has been able to build great relationships with the players, and we've created the kind of environment where our guys are excited to be where they are right now. But it starts with the right vision. It starts with having a clear mission and really laying down the values that you want in the program. And I think being consistent with that and asking our players and coaches alike to be consistent with that has created the atmosphere within the program that puts us where we are. Now, we're going to have to shift gears and now move into another phase. And that's another. This is difficult. This is not easy. It's a process that's difficult, and we're going to ask them to recharge the battery now. And they've had a tough summer. It's been difficult. They've done a great job. I'm proud of them. But now we go through another difficult phase. But they feel really good about where they are with relationships with coaches and players, and now we go through the next stage. So we haven't played a game yet. But we're in a good position right now.
Obviously, at this point last year, you were coming off a very successful season, and now it's a different situation. But when you're saying being intentional in things, how is that maybe different from the message you were giving your team last year at this time?
Yeah, I mean, you're in a different place. You're, like I said, I think for me, there was a lot of growth as a head coach after 26 years. Learned a lot, got a great amount of feedback that allowed me to, put our football team in the position that they need to be where we are right now. Again, we're not doing anything that we're not asking our players to do on a day-to-day basis.
Now that the team has had more time with Matt in the weight room, what kind of feedback have you gotten from them about his workout program over the summer?
I would say the best way that I would put it is that they feel like they want to show everyone their preparation. I think on more than one occasion I've heard some of our guys say, "Welcome to my preparation," in the sense that they feel really good about the work they put in. It's been hard. It's been really difficult. But I think anything that's really good is difficult, and it's been worthwhile for them because they feel it when they're running. They know that they're in great shape. They know that they're physically stronger. They see it. And so now they're anxious to be able to now translate that in the football realm of things. So I would say there's a confidence level in their preparation.
Have you guys had a conversation? Has he been able to kind of quantify the success? I don't know if that's pounds lost or inches gained in a vertical or something.
Oh, yeah, we've had extensive conversations on every single player. I met with Matt and the staff, Dave, Jake, David, everybody on the staff has met with me individually, collectively, as well as the offense, defense, and special team coordinator. So we have a clear understanding of the gains that all of our players have met and exceeded in really all areas. I think that when we look at specific things, I would say that when it comes to the end of the day, I think we're really pleased with the conditioning level of the football team, and we're really pleased with the explosiveness. Those two things really stand out.
And last thing, have you worked out with Matt yet?
Heck no. Heck no. I think it's for me, I really enjoy the mental preparation part, and for me to insert myself in it and be positive in the sense that helping those guys get through the workouts. That's what I'm good at. I'm sticking to that.
Brian, Here, middle. Just a couple medical updates. Elijah Taylor, Sean Crawford, where both of they in terms of their rehabs?
Sean Crawford fully cleared, doing everything. Again, coming off an Achilles, we'll be smart. I think we'll rely on Sean, who's extremely locked in on how he feels, and a little bit of science and GPS, and probably put some restraints on him, but he's doing great and everything. Elijah, straight line, I think he's probably, probably 10 days to 2 weeks, and I think he'll be able to do everything for us, but, fully linear, excellent, great strength, side to side, probably not there yet, but moving towards that, and I think it's probably going to require him some camp work to get that side-to-side movement.
I'm curious how maybe you changed your approach this offseason to building leadership and putting guys in position to do that. I know that's you try that every year. How was this year a little bit different? What did you see this summer in that aspect from your roster?
Well, again, I go back to the same words, much more intentional in terms of focusing on that in particular with our group of senior leaders and underclassmen. We put them in roles to lead. First of all, we had SWAT teams, which were our spring-summer workout accountability teams, which we continued through the summer. So that put eight players in leadership accountability roles all summer. Everything from academics to locker room to on campus, and those things held through the summer. Losing teams were required to come in at 7 a.m. and run, so that accountability and responsibility continued. Our captains took over cleaning. No longer did janitors come in and clean the locker rooms. They did it themselves. We bought them vacuums. They cleaned the lockers themselves. They cleaned up after themselves. So that accountability then was passed on to some other guys within the locker room. And so we kept building some and drilling down deeper to get more leaders to step up outside of those 8. Because they're going to graduate, and we needed them to be in these roles prior to being selected as captains. So that happened all summer, continued to happen. We had meetings all summer. Every night we had SWAT meetings at 6 o'clock at dinner. That continued through the entire summer. So every night one of the teams met. We actually were able to meet twice with them throughout the entire summer. Something that I've never done before, and I thought it was extremely beneficial to their development.
And in terms of that next wave of leaders, who are some of those guys that you marked? I mean, we talked about Julian Love last year as maybe a guy. Who else falls in that group?
Nick Watkins, I thought, was outstanding this summer. Really did a great job in terms of coming up and leading in a number of different phases. I think if you look at Sam Mustafer, he was beyond reproach in everything that he did, both, as you know, as an engineering student, excelling in the classroom. His summer was outstanding in terms of the way he transformed himself physically, but as a leader as well. I think, we talked about Brandon Wimbush, certainly, Josh Adams. I think Dexter Williams was outstanding. I think Nick Coleman really emerged this summer, had a terrific summer. I was really proud of him. Dalen Hayes was outstanding. I could go on and on. I don't know that I stood in front of you with the same kind of immediacy in terms of naming guys, but we've got a lot of them that really have just taken off and taken hold of that because they feel this is their team, and I think the way that we put the vision and the mission in front of them, that because it's their team, they changed the way they looked at it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Brian, you talked about looking back at last season and what you learned. What do you think is the biggest thing you learned from, and how does that change what you're doing this year?
Certainly process over production. Focused way too much on production and not the process itself, and how important it is to have that attention to detail, that laser focus. You know, being smart both on and off the field, grit, you know, that attitude, those traits. You know, I let our football team down not focusing on those very important values and that process, and went right to production. Just looked to replace production, and that was the feedback that I got that allowed me to put the vision together for this football team, and the mission, and really the values that allowed us to, you know, make the kind of transition necessary for us to be where we are. And look, we haven't we haven't played a game. We got a lot of work to do, and it's going to be hard, but we're in a different place.
Can you give an example of what one process that you're focused more on, or how that's come about?
Well, habits. Habits are probably one of the things that we've spent most of the time. Creating good habits on a day-to-day basis are going to certainly show themselves in the classroom, in the community, and on the football field. Good habits, obviously, are going to show themselves in life and everything that we do. So really working on good habits on a day-to-day basis is probably the one thing that shows itself in fundamentals, which are going to be so core and essential to what we do with Coach Elko's defense. You know, that total preparation on offense of you know, staying above the line in terms of everything we do on offense, and not jumping offside or having that key turnover, making good decisions. So I think habits probably show themselves more than anything else.
And what's the biggest difference you expect to see this year in the defense?
Fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. You know, fundamentally sound, how we tackle the football, you know, and taking it away. I think it starts with the fundamentals. It starts with the, you know, just, you know, building that programming from the very beginning. You know, when we touch the field, you know, we're going to be talking about technique and assignment and tackling and how to take the football away. And, you know, we'll get to third down and nickel and dime, and we'll get to that, but it's not a priority in day 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. It's about the fundamentals, and we will be much, much improved in those areas.
In most seasons, you've entered not knowing, you know, having a quarterback competition. I think it's only the second time that you've known who the quarterback's going to be. What is the good part of that, and are there any negatives that there isn't a competition going on?
I think there's still competition. We know the #1 quarterback is Brandon Wimbush, but he's competitive. Ian Book's competitive. I think there's going to be competition there. I know how you mean it, that, you know, there's not 1A and 1B like there was last year, but those kids are so competitive that we don't have to create, you know, competition. They are so competitive in the way that they go to work every day. I'm not worried about that. So I really don't have any worries other than that we continue to build on the process that we talked about with Brandon, you know, being smart, you know, and attention to detail, and coaching them accordingly in a very positive atmosphere. You're welcome.
Coach, up top.
Yes.
You've talked a lot in the past about how, that was my fault, how important leadership was, having playmakers in positions of leadership, how important it is to have guys that are not just leaders but also can go out on Saturdays and play. Do you feel like as you go into this season, at least where you are right now, that you have players in position, that are not only leaders and captains but also guys that can be dynamic players for you on the field?
I do. I think we have enough players. I think the difference between last year and this year will be about the atmosphere that I've created within our football team, is that last year we wanted guys to make plays. And I clearly see this year is that our players are going to make us look good. I think they're going to make plays. I think they're going to exceed the expectations that we all have for them on a day-to-day basis. They want to play for Notre Dame. They want to make Notre Dame great. And so I think that they will exceed all expectations. And any ceilings that we have for them, they will exceed those ceilings.
the captains you have, for the most part, are experienced guys. We've played to a certain degree. We've seen what they can do. Every year there's always some guys that you hope as a staff can kind of take their game to another level. Who are some of the guys on the defensive side of the ball that you feel are on the verge of really taking their game to the next level, depending on how the next month goes for you? Nick
Coleman, Nick Watkins, Sean Crawford, Devin Studstill, Niles Morgan, Greer Martini, Jerry Tillery, Jonathan Bonner, Dalen Hayes, Jay Hayes, Andrew Trembetti, Tavon Coney, Devontae Vaughn. Have I covered enough?
I get the point. Yeah, I got you.
And I don't mean that sarcastically. Every single one of them have had really incredible off seasons, and I truly believe that they're going to have great seasons. And we're counting on that, and they're counting on having the best seasons that they've ever had. Julian Love, too, by the way. Right.
I'll add the couple guys I think you
Because you had a couple that I forgot.
Bilal, yeah, I think you got him. Coaches always talk about wanting to develop a rotation on both sides of the ball, and in modern football, there's always that need to, you want to keep guys fresh for 12 games. A component of that is obviously players have to earn playing time, but as a coaching staff, how during camp do you guys go about trying to establish just the flow of playing with a rotation at different spots?
Well, first of all, finding some of the guys, I think Eric asked the question about some of the freshmen, right? So we have to expose them to some reps to find out are those guys that we're going to really push in the second week after we get through some of the install and assignments and technique. When we start to play real football in practice 5, 6, 7, and 8, we have to expose them to 11-on-11 team reps and scrimmaging. So we have to expose them to that to find out whether they become parts of rotations. So that's important to do, and we'll do that. We'll do that at defensive line. We'll do that at safety. We'll do that at corner, and we'll do that at linebacker and at the rover position. So we have to be able to craft that and do that as we move through camp.
Last thing, you talked about the traits of your football team, and obviously you've been doing this since January. Every portion of your offseason builds on those things in different ways. How do you build on those traits now that you've talked about, now that the pads are on, now that the emphasis is a little different as opposed to, off the field, now that you're on the field? Well,
it's really simple in that you're either above the line on those traits or you're below the line. If you're getting the ball thrown over your head, there's no attention to detail, right? If you're jumping offside, what's your focus? If we're in a non-contact drill and you're trying to drive somebody to the ground and you can get somebody hurt, are you really being smart, right? If I'm asking you to be gritty and you can't continue to fight through hot conditions and with the proper rest, you can't fight through the entire practice. Do you have the grit necessary? So all of those things come to the forefront as to are you above that line or are you below that line on a day-to-day basis. So they all translate into the evaluation of what we need from our football team on a day-to-day basis.
Brian, right here.
Yeah.
Kind of on the line that Tom was asking you questions, let me play devil's advocate for just a moment. We were 4-8 last year and lost all those games in the fourth quarter late. Mm-hmm. If most of those games had become wins and Notre Dame ends up 8-4 or 9-3 and you go to a bowl game, mm-hmm. Are we sitting here today talking about all these changes that you've talked about and everything that's happened since January? I mean, we're all creatures of habit. Mm-hmm. So if not that 8-4, 9-3 is acceptable, but if that was the standard last year and they go to a bowl game, you go to a bowl game, are we here talking about all this stuff again?
Yes.
We are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I think that, when I would have realized that, I had realized that we had some issues going into the season. Clearly, we had some off-the-field issues leading into the season. We had some things that I had done a poor job in developing our leadership, and the message was not clear within the program. So, yeah, we would be at this same place, regardless of whether we would have had a monsoon or, you know, kicked a field goal or went for a first down instead of kicking a field goal, all of those things. So, yeah, we would have been in the same place.
Brian here. You guys have had a tremendous week in recruiting. I know you can't name the names there, but I'm wondering, what do you think it is about this program, the direction of this program, that is exciting kind of the next generation despite last season?
Well, I think kids look at more than just one season. They look at Notre Dame, the tradition at Notre Dame. They look at more than just one season. They look at the university, what this university can do for them. A lot of these guys see that it's more than just a 4-year decision. It's what Notre Dame can do for them for the rest of their lives. Still have had a great deal of success, regardless of last year, in getting to players to play at the next level. We've developed our players, obviously, from that standpoint. And, you know, we've played for a national championship. We were in the Fiesta Bowl. So those aren't distant memories. Yeah, there was a poor season last year, and we certainly recognize that, but it has not put us in a position where players don't recognize the great tradition of Notre Dame.
Brian, up here. Just wondering, what do you feel your biggest strength is as a team heading into the year, and what your biggest weakness or question mark is?
I think the relationships that our players have developed over the past 7 months is probably the strength of this football team, with players to players, coaches. You know, there's a closeness with this group. I think it's a bigger, faster, stronger group as well. I think so from a inside-out perspective, I think I would say relationships, and then outside in, a confidence perspective. Relationships and confidence.
What about weakness or question mark?
Yeah, I think always it's the ability to overcome adversity. You know, everybody's going to see at some point in the season a rough time, and how you overcome that. Certainly, our guys are going to be faced with it. We can talk about relationships and confidence right now as our strengths. Will those stick together when we face some adversity? If we do that, we'll be in pretty good shape.
And you've talked about all the changes with yourself, with the team, the way you're operating. Do you feel like a different coach today than you have for the past 26 years?
You know, I think I've made some changes that I think, from my perspective, have strengthened me as a football coach. But I think every football coach has to evaluate themselves after every year. And I think I don't feel different. I feel like I've made the appropriate changes that I needed to make to be a better football coach. And that's the most important thing.
Will fans see a different coach on the field in terms of maybe your demeanor, the way you act with your players, or are you sticking with how you coach on game days?
You know, I don't know how to answer the question other than, you know, I'm going to have my football team prepared. You know, my players are going to be in the kind of environment that they're used to with me, and they're going to know who I am. If you catch me in a 5-second or 3-second video clip on TV, that it looks like I'm in a moment with a player, it's not what happens on a day-to-day basis, and I can't control that. TV does what TV does, but I'm going to be who I am. My players know who I am. I can't control the rest of that.
Brian, back this way. You talked a little bit about your players being eager to show what they've accomplished this offseason as it pertains to their strength and their training. I'm curious, do you notice, there's always an eagerness at the start of camp. Do you notice perhaps these guys are a little bit more eager this year because of some of the changes that they've seen themselves go through?
Oh, yeah. Look, we're coming off a very, very disappointing year. I mean, everybody is fueled by what happened last year. So the eagerness is part of the confidence that they've gained in the off season. But it's also fueled by what transpired last year as well, for those that were here. So it's a combination of the confidence that they've gained in the offseason, as well as, obviously, not living up to the tradition of excellence here at Notre Dame. All of us, me included.
Last year you were forced to play quite a few freshmen, I think more than you would have liked to, more than many teams do. Are you noticing now some of those guys as sophomores might be a little bit ahead of the curve compared to what you would have otherwise thought they would be? We think that certainly the experience that they went through last year is going to certainly benefit them this year. Look, we had 4 freshmen, defensive backs that had never been through weight training, and the gains that they made in the summer were extraordinary. So that in itself is pretty exciting. So. Yeah, I mean, clearly there's a number of players that have benefited from the offseason, the spring ball, and we're going to see that translate itself. What is your primary goal at training camp over the next week and change?
Well, first of all, you're transitioning, from, as I mentioned earlier, the summer's really about, building those relationships with your team and getting bigger, faster, stronger. We're not going to be having campfires and, lifting every day. So now we transition into, preseason camp, which is really about building those habits that we talked about, right? Great run support, outstanding technique as a pass blocker, great progression reads by the quarterback. So building that programming that you need when you kick it off against Temple. We're not going to be ready to beat Temple in the first couple of weeks, okay? Because we need to build that in camp. And that starts with an attention to detail on day one, on understanding the first day of installation. And coming back in day 2 and not making a number of mistakes. And so laying that down in camp. And then as we put the pads on, great tackling, right? Great form and fit, coming off the ball, great rerouting, breaking arm tackles, all that next stage when physicality starts to show itself. Then 11 guys playing together and communicating as a unit. So there's different stages along the way. In the first couple of days, I won't know anything about tackling. I won't know much about really whether a guy can do this or that, other than, is he retaining information? Is he running the routes the right way? Is he getting in and out of his break? Those technique issues. So it's laying that programming down in camp and then progressing through the next stages of football as we work through it.
And let me build on it. I think some of the things you're talking about are the process you described earlier, and how you will focus on the process over production. At what point do you kind of switch your gear to production? Is it when the game starts? Game week, yeah. Yeah. And then it'll be one game at a time about the production of that game, so we lay all that down during the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is all about the process, and Saturday is about production. And if you do a good job of that, then the production should take care of itself on Saturdays.
Brian over here by Birch. Cameron Smith and Freddie Canteen, you've added 2 fifth-year wide receivers. Mm-hmm. How have they fit in with the rest of the team? What do they bring to the table, and how do they exhibit some of these traits of excellence?
Good question. First of all, Freddie's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, but Cam is a fifth. Maturity, Cam is physically fit, can do the things within the offensive structure, knows the offense very well. So I think immediately he goes out there and is able to compete at a high level right away because he knows the offense. Freddie has a high level of skill in which he's learning right away, but immediately both of those guys bring a maturity and a focus and attention to detail that I was looking for. A maturity, I think, if you will, to that group that I think we needed. Both of them will certainly have an impact in what we do this fall.
You mentioned the feedback that you got coming out of last season into this season. What was the toughest piece of feedback for you to accept but still implement?
Oh, the changes of personnel that I made. Those were probably the most difficult.
And then you've also added a, correct me if I'm wrong in terminology, but a sports psychologist, almost a positive...
Mental skills.
Mental skills coach. Yes. What impact have you seen on yourself from this person?
Outstanding. I think it just adds a clarity on a day-to-day basis as to, you know, when you have a path that you want to go down, you know, working with the team, Dr. Selking works with the entire team on an individual basis, a unit basis, and a position basis. When I'm able to craft my message and we're all able to get on the same page, mental skills coordination, you know, gets everybody rowing in the right direction. And when you're able to do that, everybody's speaking the same language when it comes to, you know, terms that sometimes are, you know, sometimes hard to translate. And I think that's where it comes in and really becomes really important. And so our players can really understand what total preparation is now when we talk about the physical, we talk about the technical, the tactical. They understand the mental now is part of that total preparation.
And finally, from a sports science aspect, you have all kinds of telemetry available to you that was never available back when you were playing or started coaching. What have you found to be the most valuable of that?
Probably our elite forms right now have been invaluable. Our ability to track the neuromuscular movement of our players. It's an incredible tool, and not to bore you with the details, but you know, when you have players like Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson who have reached incredible peaks in terms of weight, one of the hardest things in strength and conditioning is that, do you really want to put 600 pounds on Quentin Nelson's back and see him squat 3 more times? Probably not. So you begin to reach a plateau. Right? But when you get into neuromuscular movement, or moving the bar faster with less weight, and having the ability through our elite forms to track that, you can now see power and track power. Quentin Nelson, for example, was off the charts now in terms of improving his power from January to today. Mike McGlinchey went off the charts in improving his power, which is his first step quickness. His ability to shoot his hands, all of those things. And when you get big guys moving faster, that's a pretty impressive thing. So that piece that Dave Ballou had brought with him has been a very important piece to the science of what we're doing in the weight room. Yeah.
Coach, kind of piggybacking off of that, what you talked about with Nelson and McGlinchey, your 2 best teams here, 12 and 15, you put a lot on the offensive line, and that's considered maybe your top strength going into this season. And you alluded to how with Chip Long you were looking for that particular emphasis on the line and the tight ends. you've also been most successful when you had less experience at quarterback, like with Everett and then Deshaun a couple of years ago. You kind of have a combination of both. Do you see this team taking on the identity or personality of those type of teams?
Well, I think those are all true. If that was the case and we could write that in and book it, I'll take it. But that's who we are. I mean, we're going to rely on an outstanding offensive line. We think 5 tight ends that are all capable and ready to play this year. Depth at running back, and a quarterback who is multidimensional, but we'll see his really first full start against Temple. So I think you've kind of said what we already know, and we're gonna. That's who we'll be.
Do you want to take some of the onus off of Brandon and put it more on the line, the backs, and the tight ends?
I'm not going to take. I don't know that we'll take it away from him as much as that's how we'll run our offense. And I don't know that we'll ever put it on Brandon to just sit back there and, pick the defense apart. That's not what we want him to do. That's not what we're going to ask him to do. We're going to play the game to our strengths. But I don't know that I would go into the season and say, hey, the narrative is let's take pressure off Brandon Wimbush. No, we want Brandon Wimbush to be one of the 11 guys and contribute with his strengths on the offensive side of the ball, and know that he'll be able to contribute effectively.
I guess a different way of saying it, as you mentioned with Everett in 2012, it's like he didn't have to drive the bus, but he had to, be on it.
Yeah, I did use that phrase. I did use that phrase. I would say that Brandon, possesses a great understanding of what we're doing, and I'm not here to stand in front of you and say that we have to protect Brandon in any fashion.
And also, in 2012, at least you had the benefit of an outstanding dominant defense to help carry it. How much of that plays into the role? Because that, unlike the offensive line, is maybe the bigger question mark of just where your team can go this year.
Yeah.
And that way, do you put more pressure on the offense?
Yeah. Again, we have a lot of questions that will be answered as we move forward. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to meet and exceed everybody's expectations. And I can't wait to watch Andrew Trombetti. He's up to 262 pounds. The physical, and everyone's going to write this down and go, no way, he's not 262. He's never been 262. He's 262 pounds, okay? And wait to see him play. I mean, I just think there's a lot more guys that are going to be meeting and exceeding the expectations. So we'll see. I mean, we haven't played it down. We haven't, we haven't played anybody. But let's just let them go out there and see what they can do. But we've got enough guys.
Will you be flipping, Andrew, to both sides?
He needs to know both sides. He needs to know both. He needs to know both. Absolutely.
He'll be like the third guy, the rotation. There.
He's got to be able to play the strong side and the drop. Yes. Yep. No question.
Thank you.
And we'll have a few of those guys. I mean, there's going to be some guys that are going to have some, multi-positional, whether it's in the back end of the defense or linebacker or defensive end. So, when we get 6-7 days into this and somebody's over here, we got to, it's not etched in stone. We're going to be moving some guys around.
All right. Thank you,
Good?
everybody.
All right. Thank you.